Could the Lions add another edge rusher? And we go to Minnesota.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, here we go, everybody. Another episode of Locked On Lions. It's a Thursday edition on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Matt Derry with you on this, a Thursday, June 27th. Into Friday, June 28th. Thanks for making us your first listen, checking us out wherever you get your podcasts. What is going on, everybody? Please subscribe. Watch us for free on our Locked On Lions YouTube channel. Thank you to our everydayers who are out there. And thank you to those of you that send in voicemails to us on our SpeakPipe page at speakpipe.com/Derry podcast page. We played a couple of those for you yesterday. We'll do a couple more. Get some more in a couple of weeks. Again, I am off next week, so I'm taking a little vacation, so no show next week. But coming up today, the legendary Luke Braun from Locked On Vikings. We checked it in Chicago. We checked it in Green Bay. What's going on with the Vikings and JJ McCarthy and everything else going on with the Lions rival in the NFC North? We'll do that coming up momentarily right here on Locked On Lions. The episode today brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app. Create an account and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Follow us on Twitter at Derry Speaks, at Locked On Lions, and the Matt Derry Facebook fan page. All right, real fast before we get to Luke Braun from Locked On Vikings. Albert Breer had a mailbag at SI.com yesterday, and they were talking, some questions were asked about the Lions. And a Lions fan asked about going all in and adding another free agent and spending some more money. Breer wrote, and that brought me to the idea of adding a pass rusher to station opposite Aiden Hutchinson. We talked about this yesterday a little bit. Right now, the Lions would probably start Marcus Davenport there, which isn't a huge problem. It probably requires a little more depth. Breer goes on to say, along those lines, adding a veteran such as Yannick Ngakoue or Emmanuel Ogbah would make some sense. It would help the Lions protect against Davenport's extensive injury history and also add to what the team could do on passing downs. If things go according to plan this year, the defense will be seeing a lot of those situations. End quote. So mailbag, Albert Breer talking about, could the Lions add another pass rusher? Let me say this about both of those players. Number one, both of those guys are veteran players that could help a team. Yannick Ngakoue, the last 8 years, has played on 6 NFL teams. And in the last 4 years has played on 5. He had at least 8 sacks every year of his career before last year when he was kind of a bust in Chicago. And the Bears, who always could use pass rush help, are not bringing him back. He also has had an ankle injury that has kept him out. And Yannick Ngakoue, here's what's funny. When he was in Indianapolis a couple of years ago, he didn't have a bad year, and the Colts let him walk. 5 teams in 4 years is a bit of a red flag for me. Emmanuel Ogbah played the last 4 years with the Dolphins. Every year, except one, for the last 5 years, including going back to Cleveland for year 5, he has had at least 5.5 sacks. He can play outside, he can play inside, but again, not a real high-impact player. And again, sitting here on July 26th, he hasn't been signed by anybody. You can never have enough corners. You can never have enough pass rushers. So I would probably say no to both of those guys. There are other edge rushers available. Carl Lawson, Marcus Golden, Shaq Lawson, Jerry Hughes, and also former Lion, who's still living here in the area, Charles Harris, has been unsigned. But I don't think the Lions are going to make a move right now. I think they're looking at Josh Pascal and John Kaminsky as 2 bounce-back candidates this year. We talked about James Houston a little bit. They signed Matthew Betts out of the CFL. They've got Aiden Hutchinson. They've got Marcus Davenport. I also think Brad Holmes likes versatility there. And that's why I think you'll see more of Pascal maybe lined up sometimes at edge, and Kaminsky as well. I don't think Ogbah nor Ngakoue are going to be Lion type of signings. Albert Breer is right. Lions could use maybe one more. there's an injury in camp or something like that, then maybe you pull the trigger. But right now, I would probably say no. Ngakoue he never can find a home. He's got a lot of talent, but just never can stick anywhere, which makes no sense to me because he's not a bad football player. 2 years ago, he was good in Indy, and the Colts just let him walk, which was interesting to say the least. So that's my thoughts on that. All right, coming up next, Luke Braun, the legend from Locked On Vikings, will join us. We'll talk to Lucas about what's going on in Minnesota. We'll do that coming up next right here on Locked On Lions on the Locked On Podcast Network, a Thursday edition. Locked On Lions brought to you by eBay Motors today. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, joining us right now, as promised, Luke Braun, Locked On Vikings, joins us. We haven't talked about Minnesota and gotten an update from what's going on with the boys in purple in a while. Luke, great to see you.
Hey, Matt, always a great time.
Yes. How's life? How you been?
Pretty good. Doing the summer thing, talking about, this is when Locked On Vikings does the Everyman series, so we do a lot of kind of puff piece, backstories, getting to know new players, that kind of thing, which is always a really fun time for me. There's not a lot else to talk about, so I can really go in and do what I want. I like it.
I'm interested. What does your audience think of Peter Bukowski?
Hey, look, if you don't have anything nice to say, I love Peter. I love sparring with Peter. Much of the audience does not feel the same way.
True. That's a good way of putting it. I love that.
And he's going for that. Yeah.
We had a Rachel Hotmeyer as a new TV anchor here in Detroit. We had her on, and actually Pete introduced me to Rachel, so I wanted to put her on the show. And I let people know that she's a friend of Pete's, and just the YouTube commenters are like, Peter Bukowski. Like, it's just, it's the usual routine, but
yeah, he gets that a lot.
All right, so what's going on in Minnesota? Like, everybody's talking about the Bears, everybody's talking about the Packers, people talk about the Lions, of course, repeating, and certainly our team is a lot of fun here in Detroit, but Minnesota's kind of the forgotten team, yet some intriguing storylines here, and this is still a pretty decent football team, don't you think?
Yeah, they're not going to be a circled win, but I think there's a reason they're last in the division odds, right? Like, you go from Kirk Cousins to this Sam Darnold and a rookie thing, which is long-term the thing that needed to happen, but short-term, not going to be great. You're not going to expect a lot from it. Maybe that's the thing. So Sam Darnold, he's going to be the starter headed into camp. What they've got going with JJ McCarthy right now is essentially they've got, here's the stuff we want you to work on, and we don't care how long it takes. Let's get you right. Let's get you ready, and then you'll go in when you're ready, when you're better than Sam Darnold, which right now they have completely torn apart his throwing motion, and a lot, just learning the timings and just the ins and outs of Kevin O'Connell's offense is a learning curve as well. So it's a lot of work in progress stuff. He's like, there are misses in OTAs, but nobody's concerned about them. That's, I guess, the way that it's going, because you can tell that he's thinking a lot because he is going through his throwing motion way differently than it was in college. It looks super different, and he looks like he's new to it because he is. So we have to wait for that to become the right muscle memory and all that stuff. So we need a little bit of patience here. That's what Sam Darnold's in the building for. And then he'll start for as long as he starts, and as long as we don't have so many disasters where we're like, God, we got to bench him. But even if we do that, it might be Nick Mullins. They're very intent on not putting JJ McCarthy in before he is ready. I think we've all seen how bad that can go with quarterbacks. So if you put him in right now, for example, he's going to revert to all of his old college habits you wanted to get rid of. And they're all getting rid of that. He's taking to the stuff the way he wants. Everybody's really excited about him still. There's misses, there's inconsistency, but then there's a few plays that you go, okay, yeah, no, the talent's definitely there. We're just learning new stuff.
It's interesting having you on and hearing your angle on it because you're so close to it as opposed to us. Number one, obviously here in the state of Michigan, people love the guy. And then they're thinking, now, wait a minute. I read on the internet he's number 3 behind Nick Mullins. How can that be? They traded up to get him in the first round, blah, blah, blah. So like the way you're saying it as opposed to this guy, man, I didn't play this year. It's like, oh, the sky is falling nationally, but you say KOC and the Vikings have a plan. After
the way that the national community treated the Justin Jefferson contract, I don't have to listen to them ever again. I'm sorry. You all lost your credibility when you said that Justin Jefferson wanted to sandbag his hamstring injury because he wanted out of Minnesota. The second anybody said that, I know that they're not worth listening to anymore. But the third string part is the plan, because you would hate to have Sam Darnold say, get hurt week 2, JJ McCarthy isn't ready, you don't have another backup ready to go. So there is a competition for that kind of temporary backup role, but I think what people forget is that this is a short-term state of affairs. This is I think a humanity thing, but maybe not even a sports thing, like a humanity thing. We're all very much prisoners of the moment. The way things are now is the way they will always be. And there's not really, as a community, a great ability to look forward a year. Do you see JJ McCarthy still being QB3 by November? Probably not, unless he's not ready. Then that would be the right move. But by this time next year, no, we're not going to be going, oh my God, we have to go sign Ryan Tannehill because we still have, we're going to cut JJ McCarthy. That's not what's happening here. It is a short-term state of affairs. We are burying him with the threes so that he has a nice, quiet place to learn. If you have to stop practice to work on the quarterback's footwork, which is worth it, would you rather stop the practice with the ones that are going to play, or would you rather stop the practice with the threes that are all going to be on other practice squads in a month?
It's interesting. It just is not the norm anymore. Back in the day, it was, blah, blah, blah is going to hold the board for a year, whether it was Mahomes, whatever. And so
Mahomes sat out a whole year.
Right.
Mahomes was not QB1 to start the year either. Bryce Young was. How'd that go?
Yeah, exactly.
He had a lot of stuff he should have fixed. The way he drops back is not professional. That is college. He has a college drop back, and they just let him run with it. And it was not good. There was a lot of stuff that he should have worked on between getting drafted and starting with the Panthers, but they threw him right in and they didn't work on any of it, and look how bad it went. And I think there are some guys that don't need that, like Anthony Richardson. I don't think needed that, and he did pretty well to start out. CJ Stroud, I think same thing. CJ Stroud, one of the most pro-ready quarterbacks I've ever scouted, which is not a long list. I haven't been doing this for nearly as long as other people. But he was incredibly pro-ready, and it worked out. But it depends on the guy, I could see Bo Nix starting right away for the Broncos because he is mechanically as ready as they come. And there's a talent thing, that's why he fell. But he is as ready as he's going to be right off the bat. So he might start right away in the way that Mac Jones did, but then fall off. But that is all short term, Mac Jones started week 1. That didn't matter. So this is all a short-term thing. And I implore people to have a modicum of patience when it comes to maybe the guy that needs the most patience, which is your rookie quarterback. That's the most important time. If you're ever going to be patient and just hold your breath for 1 second instead of assuming that the guy's on the threes because he's just that bad. I don't know. I feel like people can open up their brains a little more if they really want to.
What do you, Luke Braun with us, Locked On Vikings, what do you think of Darnold, and what do the fans think, by the way?
I don't expect much from him. I don't expect consistency. I think he'll be interesting to watch. He's talented. He's also got a lot of bozo in him. I'm sure we're going to have games where he throws 2 interceptions and they lose, and then he's going to have games where he throws 3 touchdowns and they win. If we can scrape our way to 500 with him in for as long as he's in, I'd be pretty happy with that. But he's a placeholder. By 2 years from now, we're going to go, oh, yeah, Sam Darnold started a couple games for us. It's not going to register on the long term. on the long-term thing. It seems like playing with Kyle Shanahan was really good for him. He really liked that. It seems like he learned a lot of new things there, which is good. Maybe learned to quiet himself a little bit. He's a little bit older, a little bit more seasoned now. Maybe you can quiet your mind, as Kevin O'Connell would say. But my expectations for him are not like a lot of people are saying, oh, what if he plays so well that would you ever extend him? No, I think he keeps the seat warm. That's all he's here for.
Some new faces on the offense I want to talk to Luke about, and the Brian Flores effect, which was immense last year on the defensive side. We'll do that next with Luke Braun from Locked On Vikings. But first, let's talk about our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel, I should say. Summertime means baseball. You know where to go to bet on the games. It is FanDuel. NBA Finals is done. Stanley Cup Finals done. We got baseball here. Right now, new customers with our friends at FanDuel get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet everything from player props and whatever you want when it comes to Major League Baseball. Heck, you want to bet on the WNBA, you can do the same thing. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get that big win added to your summer bucket list. Again, Tigers lost per usual, 2 out of 3 to the Phillies, but you bet Philly or at player props like on Bryson Stott or any of these people. It's fun. That's what you want to do. Do it at FanDuel. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Our buddy Luke Braun with us, longtime host at Locked On Vikings, joining us today on a Thursday edition, Locked On Lions. We'll get to some Lions stuff with Luke too, but all right, Aaron Jones on the Vikings. This is sort of weird. Yeah. It's like all these guys moving around the division when it comes to running backs, but that offense with Hockenson and Addison and JJ and Aaron Jones is going to be pretty darn good, is it not?
We'll see about Hockenson. He's probably not going to be there week 1. When do the Vikings play the Lions this year?
Oh, gosh, we don't go till week 7 and then week 18.
Okay, so week 7, I would say, the way that they've talked about it with Hockenson, I would say you're approaching a coin flip to see him. Week 18, he should be there by then, although there's definitely, with the nature of his injury and how late in the season he got it, there is absolutely a world where he just misses the whole year because he tore the he hurt his MCL and his ACL, so you had to wait for the MCL swelling to go down before you could go operate on it, which delayed the whole thing a month, so he didn't get his surgery till January, and that makes it so that the rehab puts him basically right in the season, give or take 2 months. Like, who knows what happens. So we'll see about that. Everybody's really excited about what Jordan Addison can do, especially in the parts of OTAs where Justin Jefferson wasn't there and he was wide receiver 1, and it kind of reminded you of when he was wide receiver 1 last year and how well that went on Monday night against the 49ers and just dunking on the Packers in the game before Kirk got hurt. He did all kinds of really, really cool stuff. Again, there's a consistency thing with him where he will just disappear for games if you play him a little bit bigger and a little bit more physically. I actually think the Lions did a good job of that, or at least in the first game. He went off a little more in the second game, if I recall, but that was, who cares about that? That didn't really matter to either team. So there's like tempered excitement about those. I love Hockenson. When are we going to get him? Love Addison most of the time. Aaron Jones, love him. Very excited about him. He looks bursty. He doesn't look old at all. Physically, he does. His hairline is a mess, but he doesn't run old at all. But how much are you going to get him, right? Like, how healthy is he going to be? The only one where there isn't any question mark around it is Justin Jefferson. And that's really the whole thing, is as long as one of those guys is on for the rest of the game, you can punish someone for doubling Jefferson too much. You can hit Addison on a post over the top. Or if he's not on today, but you have Hockenson, you can do something with that. As long as you have that, you've got the weapons that you need for the offense. But obviously, especially from a fantasy perspective, if you're talking like fantasy drafts, I would fade all of the non-Jefferson guys, both because sharing a market with Justin Jefferson is bad news. He's going to hog all the targets. But also because the quarterback situation is just not something you can trust right now. It's either Sam Darnold or a rookie you don't know anything about. So there's reasons to be excited, but I think there's better reasons to hold back and temper it and kind of say, okay, this might not be the explosion that we might not just pick up right where Kirk Cousins left off. I don't think that the plan was expecting to do that. This is where we're definitely prioritizing the long term over the short term right now.
I mean, the defense last year really did well. I mean, Brian Flores did a whale of a job. It was
until they found Ben Johnson.
well, yeah.
Ben Johnson cracked the code. Zach Taylor cracked the code, and Ben Johnson optimized it. That's
I mean, that was late season, but I thought for the most part, weeks 1 through 15, whatever it was, I mean, that was a pleasant surprise, right? And there's a lot of young talent there. What do you think of the draft and what they added, and how good do you think? Do you think that defense can keep them in the games, especially if quarterback play is subpar?
Yeah, a lot of the reaction to the draft was more about the cost than the quarterback, which I think is an incorrect way to look at it. But people were happy that they didn't give up a bunch of firsts to get JJ McCarthy. They traded up. They traded a 4th and a 5th. Who cares? They got their quarterback, and they still had a first-round pick. And then that first-round pick turned into the 3rd defender off the board in Dallas Turner. They are hyped on Dallas Turner. Christian Darrisaw, I mean, they don't have pads on yet, so big grain of salt, but Christian Darrisaw is already going like, oh my God, this dude's got a nasty spin move. He's quick as hell. Like everybody's very excited about Dallas Turner. So we'll see what we get from him. They also have Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel as starting edges. So there's a little bit of tug of war there over who's getting the snaps. Van Ginkel's been hurt though, so Dallas Turner's been working with the ones and two. Or actually, I think he's been with the twos. Again, that's just rookies. But they're if he's going up against Darrisaw, he's with the ones. So there you go. Yeah. Very excited about Dallas Turner. And then it's like depth guys from there because they didn't have a second or a third. So we waited all the way till day 3. We got like Kyrie Jackson out of Oregon. We'll see if he, contributes at all. And then you got a bunch of guys that you're going, will they or won't they make the team? But defensively, they did add a lot, but it was all replacements. They lose Daniil Hunter. They replace him with Van Ginkel and Hunter and Grenard, but are any of those guys as much of a game wrecker as Daniil Hunter is? Are those guys you walk into the game fearing, or are they all good enough players that can do a job? And I think you see the same, you lose Jordan Hicks, you get Blake Cashman. Is that 1-for-1? Was that improvement? Was it less? How do you work with that? They got Shaq Griffin in the secondary. He's been cut more recently than he's been a starter. So I think the defense, I don't know if it's better. Maybe it's just more expensive. And it's the talent is more spread out.
It's all former Texans now too. Congratulations.
Yeah, right. Yeah, a whole bunch of former Texans. But it's more spread out. You don't have like one guy, and if you double Daniil Hunter, you can get through it. There's more people to deal with, but none of them are quite as much of a headache. And Harrison Smith is still around doing his thing, by the way.
Oh yeah, and I loved what Cam Bynum said the other day. He's like, "Hey, we think we can win. We think we can get Super Bowl."
He'd probably get money, I think, soon.
A little confidence there.
Hey, when you're a D-back, you gotta. If you're a defensive back, you can't be in touch with reality. You play for an 0-17 team and be like, man, a couple more bounces, we'd be in the Super Bowl. Like, you have to just have that mentality. That's DB mentality, because that's the one position of all positions in football where hesitation is the most fatal. So you just gotta you gotta get burned and go back and be like, that was a fluke. I'm still the greatest, and do everything as gung ho. That's just how DBs have to think.
All right, thoughts on the Lions? Do you think the Packers are going to catch them? And how would you rate these teams in the division 1 through 4?
Lions are favored, right? I think that's appropriate.
Yeah.
To me, I think the onus is on the Packers to prove that. I think the Lions have the roster that they've built is so clear and with its vision. And now you can tell that Brad Holmes agrees, right? He's extending everybody. He's locking this in. He's saying, okay, 3-year window. Let's do this. You'll live and die with how well Goff plays. If Goff has a game like that Dallas game last year, you're not going to win that game. If he plays like he did against the Rams or the Bucks in the playoffs, you're going to win that game. Like you're going to, sink or swim with that. Also, the same thing exists for the Packers, for Jordan Love. And the Lions got further with their version of that deal with the devil than the Packers did. So I think it's on the Packers to prove that it's going to be different this time. Jordan Love's coming off a really hot back of the season, but there were inconsistencies that would give me pause. And I'm going to kind of treat them the same way that I treated the Lions last year, which is, okay, I'm going to wait until I see it before I believe it. I see the hype, I understand it, but I want to see it physically manifest before I go, jumping in. But I like what the Lions have built. They had a vision, and it's not the normal vision for a team. It's a ground and pound kind of thing. It's, gap running, and it's grit and that whole thing. That's not popular. That's not the Shanahan McVay way of doing things where you do high flying and you scheme everything out. That's not nerd ball. But because it was built with a focus, and because Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes have been unflinching in building that, it worked. I think there's a really good lesson to learn from that. Will it continue to be as successful? I don't know. I mean, look, the Eagles went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and then they got dunked on in the wild card. Maybe the same thing happens to the Lions, or maybe they come back, a year more of continuity, but essentially you're welcome to the window. The Lions are in a window. I don't think anybody would argue that. And now it's just a matter of finding a way to convert, which, trust me, it's more dependent on luck than you wish it was. But all you can ever do is open the window when it comes to building a team. That's the most you can do. You can't actually force what happens in January.
All right. So are you putting the Vikings ahead of the Bears still? If we were to do a little ranking action, or are you waiting and seeing? What do you think?
I think that's a hard question. Probably not. No, I don't think so. I think the Vikings have way more holes in their roster than most of Vikings media is willing to admit. I think there are problems here that need to be solved. The way I'm telling everybody is just please look away for a minute, okay? Like, we're not serious this year. We're in the middle of a change. We're fixing something else. Everybody just kind of everybody close your eyes for a second and go focus on somebody else. We'll be back in 2025.
Luke Braun never pulls punches. We always appreciate having him on. It was awesome as always. Thanks, Luke.
Always a pleasure.
There he is, Luke Braun with us, Locked on Vikings, a Thursday edition of Locked On Lions.